Tourism to the U.S. is on the decline. The U.S. is set to lose $12.5 billion because of it.
2025 isn't just another election year or another housing cycle. It's the year America is staring down the barrel of a collapse so massive it could rewrite our future. Not some distant theory, it's unfolding right now. Walk with me and I'll show you the cracks spreading across the foundation of the so-called American dream. America's national debt has blown past $35 trillion, a number so big most people can't even wrap their heads around it. To put it in perspective, if you spent $1 million every single day since the birth of Christ, you still wouldn't hit $35 trillion. That's how deep the hole is. And here's the terrifying part. The U.S. government now pays more in interest on that debt than it does funding the entire military. The Pentagon's budget is massive, but the debt monster is even bigger. Every time the Fed nudges interest rates upward, Washington's payments explode higher, like throwing gasoline on a fire that's already out of control. Politicians will tell you this is sustainable. That's a lie. We've entered what economists call a debt death spiral, where borrowing leads to more borrowing and interest costs eat the budget alive. It's a hamster wheel with no exit. And guess who's on the hook? Not them. You are. It shows up as higher taxes, inflated grocery bills, shrinking retirement accounts, and a dollar that buys less every single year. The collapse doesn't need to happen tomorrow. It's already underway, one interest payment at a time. If you thought the 2008 housing crash was the end of America's real estate nightmares, think again. What we're living through in 2025 is shaping up to be housing bubble 2.0, and this one could be even uglier. Home prices have soared so far beyond wages that buying a house is now basically a luxury sport. The median U.S. home costs more than 6 times the average household income, the widest affordability gap in history. Mortgage rates have climbed high enough to crush monthly budgets, locking millions of families out of homeownership altogether. For first-time buyers, the so-called American dream is now just a Zillow screenshot. Pandemic boom towns like Austin, Phoenix, and Tampa, they're cooling fast. Inventory is rising, sellers are slashing prices, and desperate homeowners who bought at the peak are already underwater. Sound familiar? It's the exact same movie we saw in 2008, except now the stakes are higher because inflation, insurance, and property taxes are all climbing at the same time. Housing used to be the ultimate wealth builder in America. Today, it's becoming a financial trap. People aren't buying homes anymore. Homes are buying people, draining every last dollar they've got. For nearly a century, the U.S. dollar has been the world's king. Oil, trade, global reserves, everything ran through the greenback. But in 2025, the crown is slipping, and the world is starting to build an escape plan. The BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, plus new members like Saudi Arabia, are pushing harder than ever to ditch the dollar. They're trading in local currencies, experimenting with digital payments, and stacking gold like it's going out of style. Every deal that skips the dollar is one more crack in America's financial empire. Here's why it matters. America's entire lifestyle, from cheap imports to endless government spending, depends on the dollar's reserve status. If the world stops needing dollars, Washington can't just print money without consequences. Inflation won't just be a temporary problem, it becomes permanent. You'll feel it when your grocery bill doubles, when foreign investors dump U.S. bonds, and when the rest of the world no longer props up America's bad habits. The dollar doesn't have to die overnight, it just has to bleed out slowly. And right now, that bleeding has already begun. Walk through any American mall in 2025, and it feels less like shopping and more like visiting a graveyard. Retail is collapsing at a pace we haven't seen since the Great Recession. Big chains are shuttering hundreds of stores, small businesses are closing their doors, and once busy plazas now sit half empty, plastered with for lease signs. But it's not just retail. The banking system, the backbone of everyday credit, is cracking too. Regional banks, the ones that keep small towns and mid-sized cities alive, are under massive strain. Rising interest rates are squeezing their loan books, commercial real estate defaults are piling up, and depositors are quietly pulling cash. We've already seen a few failures, and the FDIC is stretched thinner every year. Here's the ugly truth. When banks tighten lending, everything slows down. Businesses can't expand, home buyers can't get mortgages, and credit dries up. That's when a slowdown morphs into a collapse. 2008 was triggered by a mortgage crisis. This time, it's broader. Housing, retail, banking, all bleeding together. And unlike last time, Washington can't just bail everyone out without pouring gasoline on the inflation fur. For decades, the American middle class was the backbone of the country, working 9 to 5, buying homes, raising families, and maybe even saving for retirement. But in 2025, that backbone is cracking under pressure, and the so-called middle-class lifestyle is slipping out of reach. Here's the reality. Wages are stagnant, barely moving at all after inflation chews them up. Meanwhile, the essentials, rent, food, healthcare, car insurance, utilities, are climbing at record speed. Families aren't upgrading their lifestyle anymore. They're just fighting to keep the lights on. Retirement? Forget it. Most Americans can't even cover a $1,000 emergency, let alone build a nest egg. Parents are juggling multiple jobs while still drowning in debt. And for younger generations, buying a home, the traditional path to stability, feels like trying to win the lottery. This isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about stress, broken families, delayed dreams, and a generation living paycheck to paycheck in the wealthiest nation on earth. The middle class isn't just squeezed, it's being systematically erased. And when the middle collapses, the whole house of cards goes with it. For most of the last century, America called the shots. Trade, technology, global influence. If the U.S. sneezed, the rest of the world caught a cold. But here in 2025, that grip on power is slipping. And rivals aren't just catching up, they're pulling ahead. China is pumping trillions into infrastructure and manufacturing, while America debates whether it can even fix its highways. BRICS nations are building trade networks that cut Washington out completely. And every new trade war headline just confirms what the world already suspects: the U.S. isn't the unstoppable empire it once was. Even militarily, the cracks show. America still spends more than anyone else, but funding wars while drowning in debt is like flexing in public while your bank account is overdrawn. Allies notice, enemies notice, the rest of the world starts making backup plans. Meanwhile, supply chains remain fragile, semiconductors are a geopolitical choke point, and the dollar's dominance is no longer guaranteed. This isn't just about losing status, it's about losing leverage. The U.S. isn't collapsing in isolation. It's being pushed off center stage. And when the spotlight moves, so does the money, the power, and the future. When people hear the word collapse, they picture Hollywood apocalypse, cities in flames, mobs in the streets, and total chaos. But that's not how it usually plays out. Real collapse is slower, quieter, and way more suffocating. And in many ways, it's already here. Collapse looks like states going bankrupt and slashing pensions that millions of retirees counted on. It looks like rolling blackouts because utilities can't keep up with crumbling infrastructure. It looks like schools closing early, libraries cutting hours, and hospitals drowning under shortages of staff and supplies. It's people downsizing not by choice but by necessity. Families moving back in together. Young adults delaying independence, and whole towns shrinking because jobs vanish overnight. It's grocery store shelves that don't fully restock, and neighborhoods where for sale signs rot in the yard because no one can afford to buy. The truth is, collapse doesn't announce itself with one big bang. It's death by 1,000 cuts, slow, relentless, and impossible to ignore once you feel it in your own pocket. And if you haven't noticed yet, that feeling has already started spreading across America. America isn't going to collapse in some single dramatic headline. It's collapsing one bill, one layoff, one broken promise at a time. The signs are everywhere. Debt spiraling out of control, housing turning into a trap, the dollar bleeding influence, retail dying, banks wobbling, the middle class squeezed dry, and America slowly losing its grip on the world stage. This isn't a future problem, it's happening now, in plain sight. And the harsh reality is no politician, no Fed press conference, no quick fix is going to stop it. The system isn't designed to be saved. It's designed to keep dragging you down with it while the people at the top cash out. So the real question isn't if America collapses, it's what you're going to do about it. Will you prepare, adapt, and face reality head on? Will you join the resistance, or will you succumb to the system? The choice is yours. Or will you keep pretending the cracks in the foundation are just temporary? Because collapse doesn't wait for your permission. It moves with or without you.